Miss Lisa. I like that song a lot. I'm thankful for the Lord's mercy. None of us went looking for God. You said, well, I did. I came to church one day looking for him. Well, what'd you come for? Because God came looking for you first. That's the way he does it. And I thank the Lord for that. And he didn't love us because we're something. He loves us because he's something. Because he is love. God is love. And thank God for that. Because I don't know where I'd be if I got what I deserved. I know I'd have my back broke, be in hell somewhere. I just know that would be the truth. And, you don't have to be a drug addict to deserve hell. All of us are without God. Just think, some of us got saved early. Just think the things you've done as a saved person. But then some of us can look back at what we did before we were saved, and we can't believe we did it. We honestly cannot believe that was our lives. And so thank God for the Lord being lifted up on that cross for us. And so I want to talk to you tonight about the Jewish, kind of give you the understanding of this book here. And just, I'm not going to preach the whole book. It's a great book. And these chapters are wonderful. And I've always loved Hosea just because there's a song that was written. And I forgot who sings that song. Maybe I'll send it out in a group text about go plead with your mother, and we understand the story of Hosea here in just a minute. I'll tell you about this story. But Israel at this point in time, when he's talking to Hosea, the God of heaven is talking to this prophet. And it's in the time when Uzziah was the king, and Jotham and Ahaz and Hezekiah. There was a whole slew of different kings in Hosea's time. And God has come to him because Israel is wicked. Now let me say, when I say Israel is wicked, the more I read about them lately in my Bible, and I begin to look at what God says, and just what God says alone about them in the book of Hosea. They were sodomites. They were sleeping around. They were into drugs and alcohol and other people's gods. They were worshiping graven images. They were bowing down to other gods. They were taking their children and putting them in the fire and killing them to other gods. How did this happen? How did that happen by God that brings them out of Egypt and shows himself to Moses and leads them through the Red Sea and leads them through the wilderness? And I know that there was a lot of things that went on during that time, and brings them into the promised land and gives them all this comfort, and walls fall down and enemies can't fight them, and he feeds them with manna, and then he gives them a cattle on 1,000 hills and honey, and he takes such good care of them and shows them time and time again that he was God. How does that happen? Now, honestly, when I first got saved 20 years ago, I still couldn't really understand how a person could go from, especially when I first got saved. Because when you first get saved and get dedicated to God, you're like, man, I ain't ever leaving. I would never do what they did. And how did that progress like it did? Well, I've been saved 20 years. And I can tell you, this is not America. The Bible's not talking about America. It's talking about the Jews. And the Jews are in big trouble even today. This has got a lot of what's happening today in it. And it talks about the regathering, that he's going to regather. And it talks about that in Jeremiah 30. And it talks about it in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it talks about it in Isaiah some. And the gathering of the Jews, that's going to happen one day. But right now, God has got his back to them. God is crippling them. God is punishing them. And listen to me, I'm not against the Jews. I don't like that anybody's dying over there. But the more I pray and the more I think about it, Brother Andrew, I'm just not sure what they're supposed to get right now. I'm not sure what's supposed to happen over there. Listen, the world has lost its mind over it. They're downtown 30th Street tonight. Protesting, saying stop, get a ceasefire in Israel when they've got 200 people over there and behind enemy lines. Right. Let me tell you what would happen if someone came in and kidnapped 200 Americans in America tonight. They would desecrate it. They would totally annihilate it. And I hate that innocent civilians die, but we didn't go into, and I'm not here to talk about all that tonight, but we didn't go into Germany and try to save the Germans. We bombed them. We didn't go to Japan and try to save the Japanese. We killed them. War is a dirty thing. And I'm just telling you, all these people turning against the Jews and Jewish people hiding in librarians while they're beating on the door telling they're going to kill them in America. And these universities and all that stuff. Listen to me, I'm not sure what's going to happen. And now Biden has kind of did a little 180 and said, hey, maybe they need to pause. Where last week he said they need to go ahead and desecrate the place. And I believe they ought to just make it a parking lot, 100%. Let all the people leave. If they don't leave, I'm sorry. Because you have done something very wrong to our country if it was my country. And so all this stuff is going on, but I'm really not sure what's going to happen because I think eventually by the end of next week, we could be totally against them from our government standpoint. And then when everybody turns on them, the Bible talks about the armies coming from all around and closing in on them. I'm not sure that they can, I know that land, the Bible tells us that is their land, and God's going to regather them one day in the tribulation, He is going to regather them. And so if it totally right now, Brother Andrew, if they just got scattered and wiped out right there and somebody turned on Israel, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with the Bible a bit. I'd say, well, that's exactly what God said he was going to do to them. He's going to scatter them and annihilate them. And so when Hosea is talking to them, they're not in captivity yet. I believe it is around 750 BC, and I believe they would go into captivity with the Assyrians about 730 or 720 BC, 20 or 30 years later maybe. And so Hosea, God has come to him and said, listen, Hosea, my people are a wicked people. We didn't even read chapter number 2. We're probably not going to read it for sake of time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it in just a moment. But God tells Hosea, I want you to go marry a whore. It's a Bible word. I'm not trying to be nasty to you. A woman of, what does it say here? Go take thee a wife of whoredoms. Not whoredom, whoredoms. A woman that is doing wrong and is selling herself. And listen to what it says there. It says, and children of whoredoms. When we look at this, he has 3 children. The first one's his. The next 2, we don't know whose those kids are. And it says his kid in the first one. The next 2, we're not sure whose those are. And so I don't really have time to break everything down for you here tonight. But he's showing Hosea to show the people of Israel, you got this man, he's going to marry a woman of whoredoms. They didn't do that. But Israel was so backwards at this point that some people think those ladies might have been doing stuff with the priest at that point, that they were so backwards in what they were doing that they had lost their minds in what God had taught them. You understand that? And when I said America in 20 years, we're taking babies at 9 months old and taking forceps and pushing them through the brain of them and killing them. We are doing things and calling wrong right. And yesterday I saw LGBTQ whatever for Palestine. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. They would kill them. You can't even be a lesbian in Palestine. They kill you. And the world has lost its mind. And I've watched this country go from this to this in 20 years. So now, as I told you when I first started reading my Bible, I couldn't believe they did it. How in the world did they move like that? But the Bible's so unbelievable. When we read them making all these backward steps, it wasn't overnight that it happened. Matter of fact, sometimes it was 20 years and everything had changed. How does it change a country like ours, so blessed by God, to now not even having God want it? But thank God he wants us. And so he tells him, he goes, I want you to go marry a woman of whoredoms and have children of whoredoms. And he's beginning to talk and tell him, he has the first kid, Jezreel, then he has that second one, he names with that, and the names all mean something. And honestly, I don't really want to get too into that. The wife's name was Gomer. That means completion. What do you think God was saying? Well, I think God was filled up, fed up, and now he's everything the Jews are doing has come to a completion, and now he's about to act upon it. God is making a picture of what he's going to do. do. And he's trying to show Israel what's about to happen and what God is going to be able to do. When God came and got us, we were nothing. And Israel was nothing. And God put his hand on them. And God multiplied them. And God helped them to be something special in the eyes of the people. Not because they were special. God said because he was special. Because that's what he did. And so then he has these children. And things are happening. Look at verse number 10. After he has that third child. Verse number 9, then said God, call his name Lo-Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. And verse number 10, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, that there shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. This is future. God is telling us what's going to happen in the end. And then verse number 11, then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. And many people believe that would be like where Armageddon, the last fight's going to happen. And so he's saying that's all future. And then in chapter number 2, we talk about the unfaithfulness of Israel and how Israel's going to be punished. Look at verse number 1. Say ye unto your brethren, Ami, and your sisters, Ruhamah. Now God has renamed his children. The first, when the children were born, Jezreel, Jezreel means and what does it mean? To scatter, to sow in the land. And then Lo-Ami means not beloved and not obtained mercy, because it's the children of another man. She went off. He married a whore. She gave him a child, and then she went back to her old lifestyle in front of all the people of Israel. That's what God is showing him. This lady Gomer has gone off, and she's doing the wrong thing. She has 2 kids outside of marriage. And God is making that a picture of Israel. What Israel has done, they've gone off and they've started whoring after other countries, other gods. The Bible talks about they looked for their bread somewhere else. They looked for the flagons of wine somewhere else. When God was going to take care of them, they went the wrong direction of the world. And that's why God is punishing them. When we look online and see all that stuff happening, I don't know what to say. I know to pray for the Lord's will for the people of Israel. I'm not against the people of Israel by no means. But when I was over there, they're a very hard person, hard people. Not many of them are smiling. Why? They're under the judgment of God. They got nothing to smile about. They are hard-hearted people that hate Christians. But the young people, they smiled. But that's because they were breaking away from some of that stuff. I had an opportunity to talk to some young men, and they said they were at the university studying the Talmud. And that is something that happened because of all the wickedness of Israel. They turned from what God wanted them to do and what God wrote for them to do, and they came up with their own thing to do and put it in another book and had a rabbi or some rabbis tell them what it meant. And these young people are studying that. That's what they study. And I'd say, well, do you believe it? They go, well, it's what I'm getting my degree in. It's what I'm studying. And I could tell that they didn't want to answer that question. Did they believe it? They didn't believe it. They don't know what to believe. They're so mixed up. I gave a ride to a kid when I was driving Lyft way back, and I picked him up at the airport, and he got in my car, and he had one of those yarmulkes on, little 16-year-old boy, and he was going to wherever that place is in New Jersey. What's that Jewish place in New Jersey? That town. Lakewood. He's going to Lakewood. So I got this young boy for an hour, and my car was low on charging, so I said, hey, do you mind if I stop and charge? He goes, no, that'd be fine. And he gets in the car, and he's coming from a school in Chicago, a Jewish school, where he learns about this stuff. And he pulls out a vape. He goes, do you mind if I vape in your car? I said, yeah, I do mind. I really don't want you to do that. So we start talking. I start asking him, hey, so I didn't know much about it. I said, so what tribe are you from? He goes, well, nobody really knows. I think we're probably from the tribe of Judah is what he said. And I said, oh, okay. And I didn't know that it's gotten so mixed up. A lot of people have no idea what tribe they're in. And all that, a lot of that stuff was lost, and so I started questioning him, and then I started trying to plant seeds because I told him I was a drug addict, and God changed my life as a Christian. And he goes, oh, so you're a Christian? I said, yeah, the Lord Jesus Christ changed my life. And he began to indulge and to talk with me, and I began to plant seeds on him, and I began to ask him, does he believe what his dad and mom are teaching? He goes, I really don't know what to believe. He said, most young people like me really don't believe it. We're just being taught it, and we have to go with it until we get our own life one day. And we just have to act like it. And I thought, man, I cannot believe that. And I said, listen, I said, here's my number. It's on the track. I said, would you call me? Because I would love to talk to you, and I can help you to understand some things. And I'm for you. And listen, young man, because he had told me that he almost died drinking. He was in his place. He was 15 years old, and he drank too much and got alcohol poisoning and almost died. And he's this little Jewish boy with the yarmulke on and studying to be something in the Jewish community. And I said, listen, if you ever need anything, I'm your friend from here on out. And you can call me at midnight. You call me at 2 in the morning. If you need something, I'm coming to get you, and I'm going to help you. And he just could not believe it. And when I got out of the car, I was broken for him. I cried driving home. I'm like, God, help that little boy. Help him to get saved. Help him to see this. They're confused. And they don't know what to believe. So this point in time with the Jews, all the leaders had went off and started doing their own thing, and all the people started following the leaders, and they're so mixed up, just like America is today. You would not believe why all these Baptist churches in this city are going to vote for baby murderers, because they said it's up to them and God to figure that out. We're voting to get jobs in this city, and however you want to frame it and call it, with the Republicans and the Democrats and all that stuff, they're so mixed up. Why? Because they've been taught from the top that this is right, and they're not figuring it out themselves. They're being misled. And so Israel is so topsy-turvy right now, and so in the wrong direction. Hosea knows it. Hosea is seeing it. He's talking to a people that profess to be God's people, who had God's word, who saw Elijah work and Elisha work recently with the power of the miracles. They had every advantage, and they were groveling in idolatry and in sin. They were relatives to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They were a day's march from Jerusalem. They were into superstition and indulging in every form of immorality and social injustice that you can think of, and worshiping graven images at this point. And God's fed up. And God is pronouncing judgment. And he is getting ready to clean it up. So he has her go marry that girl. Has him go marry that girl. And she leaves him. And then in chapter number 2, we see everything that God says about the Israel, and how he's getting ready to, he's almost like he's talking about Gomer, but he's really talking about Israel. And he says, she has been unfaithful to me. She has run off with other men. She's run off with other people. She's looking for her bread somewhere else. She's looking for her wine somewhere else. And God lists all these things. Verse 5, look at verse 5, chapter number 2. For their mother had played the harlot. She had conceived them that had done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax and my oil and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy way with thorns. I will make a wall, and she shall not find her path. Talking about Israel now. Listen to me, we're almost done. And she shall fall after her lovers, and but she shall not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better with me For it was better with me than now. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil and multiplied her silver and gold, which she had prepared for Baal. She's worshiping Baal. Israel is totally turned away from God and doesn't want God. False religion has got them. Look at verse number 13. And I will visit upon her the days of Balaam, whereupon she burned incense to them, and she decked herself with earrings and jewels, and she went after her lovers. Look at it. And forgot me, saith the Lord. That's what happened to Israel, man. They totally forgot God. Now, like I said, I didn't mean to make this about compare it to America, but this is a nation founded on biblical principles. And God was in the schools, and God was in the homes in a lot of places in America. And now, honestly, not talking about us, I am an American. But they've totally turned away from God now. And so we're no better than Israel, but we have the grace of God. We have grace from Jesus, and God's not going to punish us like he is punishing Israel. But as a child of God, man, we better be very careful how we live and what we think about and how we're living each day, because God is fed up with Israel here. And he's pronouncing judgment. Chapter number 3. No, look into verse number 2. I'm sorry, chapter number 2, verse number 23. And I will sow her unto me in the earth, and I'll have mercy upon her that hath not obtained mercy. God's now saying, I'm going to have mercy on Israel, and she doesn't deserve it. And I will say to them which were not my people, Thou art my people, and they shall say, Thou art my Lord. And then look what the Lord does in chapter number 3. Then said the Lord unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who took the other gods and loved flagons of wine. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and a homer of barley, and a half homer of barley. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide from me many days. Look at chapter number 2, verse number 2. I think I overlooked this. Plead with your mother. God told him to tell his kids, and he renames his kids. He goes, tell your kids to go plead with your mama. She's left. She's now out in the streets again. She's probably with another man, having babies with that other man. It's a perfect picture of God's grace. And this is where I wanted to get to tonight, that we're so blessed. Because I understand some of you were a lot better people than I was before I got saved. And I'm okay with that. Because you were. There's no doubt about it. And not everybody was just a wild animal. But no matter what we were away from God, and we were not wanting God. And God came and got us. And listen to me, as a Christian, if you're a Christian who has now walked away from God again, you know what God told him? He says, go and buy her back. He not only made him marry a whore, but he says, now she's playing the whore again, and I want you to go buy her back from the man that she sold herself to. They would often sell themselves to people so they could be fed, and they would do whatever is told of them. And I want you to go buy her back, and I'm going to take care of her, and you're going to take care of her. And he makes that promise, and he says in verse number 5, afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek their Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Now, I want to be honest with you. I'm kind of torn on that. David their king, because it also says it in Ezekiel that David's going to be the king after the tribulation, a lot of things. And some people say, well, that's just, saying that's going to be God. But I'm not so sure. And it doesn't matter to me David's going to be there maybe, or David's not. I know the apostles and different things are going to be around in heaven when all that's set up. But I know this is the regathering. See, everything that's going on now in Israel is the judgment of God. And I don't know that God made Hamas come in and get them, but you know what? You read your Old Testament, and God stirred the hearts of a lot of wicked people to come and kill his people, often, to try to get them to turn to him. And I don't wish nothing bad on Israel. But the point I wanted to make tonight was this. We need to, as a church, make sure that we understand our job is to go buy them back. Everybody outside this building, down into that L where I get my hair cut now, they have just tents there right outside the door. And I think, well, Lord, just put them there for me. I'll get my hair cut. I'm just going to talk to them. But it's refuse. It's disgusting. And they chose sin. Nobody deserves anything. But God wants us to look at that. And God told him to go buy back his wife who left him, who was selling herself, having other kids, doing the wrong thing. And God showed a picture of what he was going to do for Israel when they don't deserve it. Everything that's going to happen with Israel, the love of God coming and grabbing them, has nothing to do with what they're doing. It has all to do with what God is doing. Everything you have in this life today being saved. I mean, I think about, there's so many applications in the book of Hosea in that first chapter. I think about my life. I mean, God, for some reason, you know, our relationship with God is always a picture of a marriage. And just like the husband and the wife, it's a picture of the church and the marriage of God to the church. She's the church, he's God. According to the Bible, he's the Lord. And she's a picture of the bride of God. And so we look at this and God says, I want you to go marry that person that's a whore, doing the wrong thing. I want you to bring her home. And then she's going to leave and she's going to mess up. And then I want you to go back and get her again. And so tonight, though, as a church, listen, we're undeserving. I thank God we get to be here. And man, our kids may never understand it. I hope they don't find it out the hard way. I hope that they live through the grace of God and say, you know, Pastor was this, and I don't ever want to be that. Brother Ito was this, and I don't ever want to be that. I remember when Dale preached years ago when he was a kid. He said, I'm not like Lisa and Ito and my dad, but I still needed Christ. And he's preaching on the maniac of Gadara that day, and God loved that maniac. It's a picture of the woman in John chapter number 8. Remember, she got caught in the act of adultery. You understand what that is, the act of adultery? And those men brought her to Jesus. And God says, let him that's without sin cast the first stone. And he loved her. And God is against adultery. God is against being a whoremonger, all that stuff. It speaks very, very clearly about that in the Bible. But he loved her and he told her, listen, you go and sin no more. And that's what Hosea said to her when he got her, brought her home and said, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. But I love the part about how at the end God's going to gather them. And he's going to bring them back in when they're so undeserving. I feel bad for Israel, but I don't really know what to feel. I've been having a whole gamut of feelings for it, Brother Andrew, and I'm not Jewish. And my brother-in-law told me, Pastor, Burton, don't wear that IDF shirt no more. I have the Israel Defense Force sweatshirt. He said, because people are starting to do stupid things to people like that. Someone might think that you're, and I thought, man, I don't want to be involved in any of that stuff. But I'm so glad that God loved me. And I can go over to the Jews, Brother Andrew, and think, man, they're all so wicked. But you know what? God doesn't see the wickedness. God doesn't see our wickedness, especially because we're his children. And we're covered by the blood of Jesus Christ when we get saved. And God, all he sees is his son when he sees us. And he's the same way with the Jews. He loves them. They've overlooked him. They're not looking toward him. But I'm telling you, we got to be real careful when we leave here to realize that by the grace of God, we are what we are because we didn't deserve it. Grace is something you get that you don't deserve. And by the grace of God, we ought to be showing them the exact same love that God showed us. And we ought to be out there buying them back and doing whatever we can to help the down and outer. Because I really do believe that God sees that more than me helping going and to finding some guy that's got some money and start talking to him about the Lord. I think that God blesses me more if I go to the down and outer and just show him that I care about the down and outer, Lord. And God loves them. So tonight, that's what the church is. That's what we ought to think about. And listen, I may still come back and look at some of this with you. I do want to look at some more stuff in the book of Daniel. And I've been thinking a lot about the Jews lately and all the stuff that's happening, and maybe preach to you some of this stuff about prophecy and different things so you can understand what's going on. But the main thing is, God was upset. God gave an illustration, told him to go marry that woman. She wasn't right. She left him, and God says, now go buy her back. And that's a picture of who Christ is. He buy us or he'll rebuy us, because he's never going to forget us. We're always going to be his, even if we don't stay right with him. But we'll have a lot of scars, and we'll have a lot of things that are going to affect us in our life as we go through this life living in sin, and stuff we'll never forget. But thank God, by the grace of God, we are where we are because of him. And thank God he can change your life and do what he does. And we ought to be thinking about that tonight. Let's bow our heads for prayer. And maybe the Lord spoke to you tonight. I don't know. I know it's maybe a little confusing for you. I didn't even write a note down, really. Just wrote a little bit down. But I was looking at it and thinking, man, I'm so glad God came and got me. Just a nutcase. Didn't care about anything but myself. So very thankful. And I want to be like that for the Lord. I want to reach people. The sinful soul doesn't merely just forsake the Lord. They eventually forget the Lord. That's what they did. They forgot him.